He's 5'2" and he's 6'4". He fights with missiles and with spears. He's all 31 and he's only 17. He's been a soldier for 1,000 years. He's a Catholic, a Hindu, an atheist, a Jain, a Buddhist, and a Baptist, and a Jew.
Hello, my name is Elliot. Like birdsong, folk music carries far and wide and has a large impact on many people. In the 1960s, political upheaval and turmoil was reflected by the folk music of the time. Many female folk artists and their music had an important impact on national consciousness and the awareness of political issues. Through their music, they inspired a whole generation and countless millions to join in the fight for political justice. One of the greatest folk groups of all time, the Weavers, was founded in 1948 by Ronnie Gilbert, Pete Seeger, and 2 other men. Ronnie Gilbert's strong voice helped to take the Weavers to the top of the pop charts, but they ended up being blacklisted during the McCarthy era because of their political views. The Weavers helped to popularize folk music in the great folk revival that was soon to come in the 60s. They also set the stage for political activism in the civil rights movement. One very important singer in the folk revival of the 50s and 60s was Odetta. Often referred to as the voice of the civil rights movement, she gave her powerful voice to the cause of racial equality and social justice. Martin Luther King called her the Queen of American folk music. And her performance at the 1963 March on Washington had a huge impact on many people, including up-and-coming singers who were inspired. Also performing at the March on Washington were the Freedom Singers, a group that used their voices to express civil rights issues through song. They were co-founded by Bernice Johnson, who later went on to form Sweet Honey in the Rock, an a cappella group consisting entirely of women. The Freedom Singers toured the South extensively, using their voices to educate communities about civil rights issues. Another artist who performed at the March on Washington was Joan Baez. Baez was a very active singer in the 1960s in the civil rights movement and later in the Vietnam War protests. That's a picture of her getting arrested. Another very popular singer in the early 60s was Mary Travers, a member of Peter, Paul, and Mary, one of the most popular folk groups of the early 1960s. As their fame grew, they became more involved in political and social activism, marching in civil rights demonstrations, as well as countless Vietnam War protests. Another artist was Judy Collins, who performed both traditional folk music and new protest music.
There are places I remember where when I was
This singer is Buffy Sainte Marie.
I learned not to care for whiskey, and from it I often did
She wrote one of the most famous anti-war songs of the era, Universal Soldier. She also worked tirelessly to address issues facing Native Americans, and her political activism eventually led to her being blacklisted off the radio in the 1970s. I sat down with local Northampton folk artist Susan McGrath to talk about the impact these singers and songwriters have had on her.
Well, I was certainly learning to play music myself, and I was listening to people like Odetta, Judy Collins. I listened a lot to Buffy Sainte Marie, and Joan Baez, of course. She was a great inspiration to me. And they all inspired me really to find my own voice for social change and to write my own music that would talk about social change in a way that was meaningful for me and my community. When I was at Woodstock, I saw Joan Baez, and it was such an incredible experience for me to really see her sing and to be inspired by the words of her music. And one of my favorite ones that she did was, I dreamed I saw Joe Hill last night, alive as you and me. As I said, Joe, you're 10 years dead. I never died, said he. I never died, said he.
I dreamed I saw Joe Hill last night, alive as you and me. Says I, but Joe, you're 10 years dead. I never died, said he.
The 1970s saw the emergence of a new movement in music called women's music. Music for women, by women, and about women. Olivia Records was the first women's music record label, founded in 1973. Artists such as Chris Williamson helped to popularize the genre, as well as Holly Near, a political activist and feminist. This new movement resulted in the first women's music festivals, which still continue to this day. Olivia artists such as Meg Christian helped to give the lesbian community a form of expression previously silenced in American culture. This has been A Voice for Change, Women in Folk Music, from the 1960s and beyond.
And I never knew till later why I got those funny looks. She was a big, tough woman, the first to come along, that showed me being female meant you still could be strong.
Thank you.